Hello everyone. Welcome back to Britton's Hangout Hour, episode 18. I think so, anyway. I'm here with Johanna from Johanna, her channel. She's a booktuber. If you'd like to introduce yourself, please do so.
My name is Johanna. Another way to find me is the handle Johanna Reads or Johanna_Reads. But yeah, I have a channel here on BookTube, and my channel is mostly focused on fantasy books, though I do read other genres as well. And it's a pleasure to meet you here today.
Oh, very, very nice. I'm glad you could join me. Yeah. How are you today?
Good. I'm doing good. It's a little bit busy around the house here. We just ordered some new furniture, so my husband's busy assembling that and doing all that stuff while I'm here talking to you. But doing well otherwise. It's just nice to be. It's just nice that it's summer right now. I really love the summer, so I've just been enjoying that pace and yeah, doing well.
Well, that's good. So you have a YouTube channel where you talk about books.
Mhm.
Um, I've been talking to a lot of booktubers recently on here because they're easier to find on the Discords that I'm on. So yeah, I'm glad you agreed to this.
Well, thank you. I always appreciate being invited, so thanks.
Yeah, no, I was kind of like, oh no, is this woman gonna? Because I'm always afraid I'm bugging people when I like talk to them. So
Yeah, I think you kind of have to get over that in the community.
yeah, no, that's true. But you're very nice and patient with me, so I appreciate that.
No worries. I see a drum set in the background. Are you a drummer?
Yes, I haven't played in a while, but I can play them. Um,
Ah, that's cool.
yeah, no, yeah, but I also enjoy reading. So I read books, I read comics. I actually just finished Red Seas Under Red Skies today because I'm just gonna
Yay.
knock that out before we get to this. So that was a good book. I enjoyed it. Not as much as I did the Liza Locklamora, but I was like, this is about pretty. Like I liked it a lot, nonetheless.
Interesting. Yeah, I read those two books pretty far apart from one another, and so it's kind of hard for me to know how much of it is recency bias, but I think I actually preferred the sequel
Mm.
just because I felt like the friendship between the two characters, Locke and Jean, for me, I thought they were pretty convincing as friends in the first book. Heard so much about the friendship in the series, like everybody just gushed about this friendship, and thinking, yeah, they seem like good friends. And then Red Seas Under Red Skies. That was when I really felt the emotional beats of the story. I felt the connection between those characters on a deeper level. I think just based on everything they had gone through in book one, and plus I just loved the nautical fantasy elements,
Yeah,
the pirate ships, and the way he tied in even some horror elements
yeah,
and
I
expanded the
enjoyed that as
world a
well.
lot more.
I like
Yeah,
nautical
so and
adventures.
yeah. I think for me, I actually slightly preferred Red Seas Under Red Skies, though I think both are excellent books.
Well, I just finished Red Seas Under Red Skies, so I don't know yet which one I prefer. But right now, I'm leaning on Liza Locklamore. I don't know. It just there felt like there was a lot more umph there. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you kind of cutting out a little bit.
Hmm.
Oh, there you go. I can hear you again. Sorry, you were just kind of you're kind of silent there. What were you saying?
Oh, weird. I was just saying that I feel like the plot in the Liza Locklamora might have been a little bit tighter. In Red Seas Under Red Skies, we kind of have a dual plot happening. It's just over the top, and I feel like I can accept that. I
That's
feel like that's
interesting.
kind
I
of the
thought the
fun
plot was
and
a bit more
absurdity.
tighter in Red Seas, though.
Was it?
It's
Okay.
certainly more. Oh, I don't want to say convoluted because that would sound bad, but Locke and John like to get themselves into really sticky situations. I'll put it that way. And the one they got in this one was very.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, it was. I think the big difference for me was that the plot in book two seemed to tie in a couple of more elements. Like it felt like there were multiple things that there were multiple agendas at play
Oh yeah.
we're trying to accomplish, and so I feel like it just got a bit. I know that there were some reviewers who were complaining about that, but for me, I was thinking, well, I'm just here for it. I know it's a bit over the top and exaggerated, as their missions are concerned in that series. But I think that's part of the fun, honestly. It's kind of like Mission Impossible in fantasy is how I like that how I like to describe it.
Yeah, no, that's not a bad way to describe it. Yeah, I just enjoy the world and the weird like underworld stuff. Um,
Yeah.
I like the piracy elements in this recent book. Um, yeah, no, it's good stuff. I enjoyed reading it, and I had a fun time. Hoping to complete the trilogy so far, even though it's like supposed to be 7 books. Um, Heard book 3 is not as good as the other two, but I like to see for myself. I have this bad habit. It's called finding out for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Though from what I heard there's a lot more relationship drama in that one, which okay, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
There was a
Looking forward to
romance.
that too.
There was a romance in Red Sea Under Red Skies I really enjoyed. I thought was really nice.
Yes, same here. I loved that.
And then Scott Lynch decided to tear my heart out from my chest, bastard.
Yeah,
No,
it's a great book. He's a great author. I think he's a very skilled writer too. I love his prose.
me too.
I love his humor. I think he's a very skilled writer.
Yeah, no, I like how he describes things.
Same here. Yes.
Yeah, I know you're kind of in the circles. You have a show called Why Read, which I've watched. I started writing a book recently, or well, this was actually a few months ago, but I've been writing it recently, and I often like to listen to like podcasts or people talking. So I'll watch like Jimmy, Fantasy Network. I'll watch like his like live conversations, that have been recorded, and I've been watching some of yours because I'm just. I remember you said you like having like deep conversations or something of that effect, and I enjoy that too. That's why I have this show here. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The Why Read series, it's something that I doing for a long time. Knew I wanted to do a discussion series pretty much since I started my channel. Um, and I just wanted to make sure, but I wanted to make it themed somehow. And I really liked uh, basing it on a question, and especially the why read question, because I think it's such a dynamic question. And the reasons that somebody gravitates towards reading or literature might differ at different times in their life. Um, It might be the same reason, it might be a different reason, but it also might vary across individuals. So I always like to hear people's different answers to that question, being a launching point to get into other discussions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. Um, yeah, I've also seen some of your reviews. Or I actually was watching your Red Seas Under Red Skies review before I started reading the book, because I have a thing where I like to watch reviews to kind of get myself in the mood to read it, if that makes sense. So yours was one of the ones I watched, and there were some other ones, but I didn't know if I wanted to watch them because I didn't know if they were going to spoil anything. So yeah,
Hopefully, I didn't spoil it.
no,
I try
no,
to be
no.
good about that. I do sometimes get accused of that every now and then. It's weird though. I mean, I feel like especially my early reviews, I feel like I've been so vague on spoilers and talking about plot points. Even with those, I still sometimes get these weird off the wall comments from people I don't know saying
I mean,
spoilers, and I said like I'm thinking how how did anything how did anything I said in those reviews spoil anything? just don't believe it.
Well, I kind of like to think about the structure of the book, or, what the book is trying to say or whatnot, or something like that that's kind of, I don't want to say non-specific, so I don't have to get into, spoilery territory. Because I find when there is some reviews I've seen who just like to summarize the book, and that just, I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an art to being able to summarize a book. I actually have an appreciation for that skill, and I think that can be really helpful for a very complex book. Like I know some people were doing that for the Stormlight books, for example. Like those are 1,000-page tomes, and rather than go back and reread the whole book if it's been a few years, it could be helpful to watch somebody do a detailed summary, spoiler-filled summary video about what happened and going through all the plot points. Yeah, as far as a review, that's generally not my preference either. Find when people are giving reviews, especially if it's a book I haven't yet, and they're going through this very long overview of the plot, that's usually when I tend to zone out a little bit, even if I don't want to. So yeah, I think for me, when it comes to watching reviews or doing reviews, I've really strayed away, or I've really gone away from doing detailed plot summaries. I've actually tried to do a little bit better about talking about the plot because I feel like I just don't like talking about the plot very much at all. But I do really appreciate when people talk about the themes and talk about certain techniques that the author used, or talk about how that book fits within the genre as a whole. I feel like those kinds of things could be very helpful for knowing if a book's for you or not. Adding to the discussion of what people have said about the book.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of. Have you ever watched SFF 180 Thomas on YouTube? Likes cats, or a lot of his thumbnails have cats in them. No?
I haven't. I'll probably have to check that out.
Oh, well, I will say I'll make an exception for him, because he'll give you the synopsis of the book. He'll explain, he'll give you the hook, so, and then he'll explain what he likes about it. And I just like how he's very loquacious, and he makes talking on camera about what he likes look so easy, Me, I have to make, bullet points, and because I just ramble if I don't do that. Yeah, no, I saw. I actually was earlier today. I was watching your Cormac McCarthy video, or wasn't a Cormac McCarthy video. You mentioned him in it because he passed away recently. I was very sad because he's one of my favorite authors. So
I watched your video too. I saw you did one as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I did one. I don't know if I managed to. Oh, I don't know if I managed to put into words what his work had his effect on me, but I did my best, so that's the best I can do.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I didn't feel prepared really to say in depth what he did for literature, or to talk in depth about how he moved me as a reader. But I felt like I just needed to say something. I found out about his passing. Actually, I got a message from Jimmy, of all people, right after I filmed my video about his passing, and I thought, oh my goodness, I just couldn't let it sit. I couldn't just not say anything at that point. So I felt like I just had to say just a few brief things about him. But no, I mean, I think that obviously it's kind of a shock, even though, I think, as you mentioned, he lived a very long life, and we're lucky that we had him as long as we did.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just probably pretty profound, considering the fact that he wrote about the theme of death in a way that it was so powerful, the way he talked about death in his books. So knowing that he passed on, it just puts that theme out, and I don't know, there's something about that makes his death even more poignant than if it were just any other author in my mind. I don't know.
I don't know if you've ever seen his parody account on Twitter, but there's a parody account of Cormac McCarthy, and the guy did a parody tweet yesterday of that that did make me smile a little bit. So like, it wasn't all bad, but yesterday wasn't fun. It's just I woke up, I saw the news, I'm like, dang.
Yeah.
Even though he was almost 90, I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, there were some
books. He was still writing. He was still active. I guess he was working on the Blood Meridian movie, from what I understand.
Yeah, no, it's funny that I've had some people I've known who wanted to start with Blood Meridian. I'm like, I would not start there. I mean, not just because of the violence, but it's very dense, and there's a lot going on in it, and there's a lot that he says in the book that might go over your head. Now, admittedly, Blood Meridian was the third one I read from him, so yeah, it's I would be like, I'd start with like Blood Meridian, or not Blood Meridian. I just said don't start with that. The Road or No Country or like All the Pretty Horses, which I actually just read for the first time this year, and I really enjoyed it.
It's a great book.
Yeah, no, it's still good, even though it was like more of a mainstream book. And he didn't slack.
I don't know. Yeah, there's still a lot there, though. I mean, I agree. It's a much easier read than Blood Meridian, The Crossing, which is the sequel in the Border trilogy. I still think it's a powerful book. I loved All the Pretty Horses. I thought it was so beautiful, and even dark at times too. And I think, actually, it's interesting because I started. Sorry?
It's about the loss of innocence, so, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like a perfect coming-of-age arc with the loss of innocence there.
It's even funny at
times.
I
just loved the way that character, John Grady, I loved that character so much. And I loved the way he gradually changes throughout the story. Mm-hmm. That was something that I thought was so good. And I also loved the tragic love story, Forbidden Lovers thing. It's one of my favorite themes. So it was a huge win for me. But actually, I started my Cormac McCarthy journey with reading No Country for Old Men over a decade ago. And I did not really connect with the book that much. I thought it was okay, but I didn't understand. I didn't understand anything about back then. I think I was just very ill-read. And I thought, well, I mean, it was interesting, but I didn't really understand what the big deal was. And that was like not long after the movie had just come out for that particular book. Mm-hmm. People were crying over the movie, and I thought, what's the big deal? But I didn't see the movie.
I haven't heard of people crying over it, but
yeah, I thought I don't know. I don't know if I misheard, but I thought I'd heard.
I'd say The Road's more of a tearjerker, but it's people cry at different things.
I still haven't read The Road, honestly.
It's good.
I went from No Country to Old Men to Blood Meridian, and when I read Blood Meridian, thanks to Jimmy. Like, I just read a few pages a day, and I think that's the way to go with Blood Meridian.
Yeah,
it's a dense read for sure.
I mean, I read it when I was 18. So, right around the time I was going into senior year of high school. It smacks you. It smacks you in the face, as I like to say. I did watch a video from this lady called Amy Gets Lit, which goes over chapter by chapter. That was very helpful for me.
Oh, no way. That sounds awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've read it twice now. I actually want to read it again at some point. I'm really bad when it comes to rereads because, but yeah, no, Blood Meridian is a great novel. I think No Country for Old Men's a great novel, even though, I like to tell people McCarthy's an acquired taste because he doesn't write like other people. That makes sense.
No, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. He does not write like other people. But I think that I still think that his style is one of the most unique styles I've ever read. It's very distinct, and it's very immersive too. The way that he captures the desert settings. Yeah. And it's amazing too, because one of the things I was thinking about with him recently is like in Blood Meridian, for example, he tends to use a lot of repetition. He uses that they rode on, they rode on, they rode
Mm-hmm.
on. He uses that motif over and over again, and it kind of creates a sense of cohesion in the story, and it also builds a sense of momentum going through the travels of the company throughout the
Mm-hmm.
book. But at the same time, as he has that recurring motif, there's so much variation in the way that he describes the desert. For an ordinary author, I feel like the way that they would describe the desert is like, there might be a tumbleweed, there's some sand, some cacti, you know.
It's one of those books
It's
that's
just,
like it captures a feeling more or less than
yes.
like there is a narrative going on, but it's like I like to
Hmm.
compare it to Heart of Darkness because it's not really about the story or the characters, though it does have that. It's more about the feeling, the place. This is a different time. Like I like how it's almost like you're in a like another world at points. Um,
Yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. I feel this. I feel that way too. I don't know if this is the right description of atmosphere. But I feel like that's what I love. I'm a settings person. At
Oh.
least I've grown to
Mm.
be that way when it comes to reading. I love immersive settings. But when I think of atmosphere, I think of a writer who's not only to capture the visual descriptions of a setting really well, but somebody who could actually make you feel the setting.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like McCarthy makes you feel like you're there in the desert. He makes you feel that atmosphere around you. And I just adore that in his writing. I love it.
Yeah, like I want to shower at the end of the road
It's pretty bad,
or
yeah.
Blood Meridian. Um. You're. Could you repeat that? Or
Sure. Yeah, I said it's pretty violent
oh,
and pretty grotesque at times as well.
oh, you think cut out for some reason? I don't know. It's weird, but yeah, no, yeah, no, I agree. Violence might also turn people off because it doesn't hold back. I know Mike from Mike's book. Like it's Blood Meridian's one of those funny books because, or it's not funny, but it's weird because like I can understand why someone might not like it. I mean, it took me a while to appreciate it, but I mean, it is grotesque. It is violent. Like, there's even a part where I think the judge like throws some puppies off the bridge, and you're just like, "What's this? Come on!" And
Oh,
I don't want to talk about it too much. I'm actually hoping to have a Blood Meridian discussion with a friend of mine in a few months, but um, it's a very dark and almost evil type of, or it's about evil, I should say.
it is about evil, I would say. I mean, I think there are some parts of it that are still mysterious to me, honestly. I do feel like evil is for sure a theme in that particular book. Human nature, a godless world. It has a lot of nihilistic themes. But also what you're saying about like the judge and how crazy he is. He is absolutely like the embodiment of evil. But there's also an absurdity to it. The way the judge walks around naked and
Yeah,
is hairless
he
and
loves he
like I
loves
don't know.
he loves stripping to the nude, and for whatever reason.
Yeah,
What?
yeah. And I
Also,
know that
the
there's a lot of historical elements that are tied into the story, but like Banshees and the way that they are described too, and colors and the garb and like the what I don't know, it's just like it's so absurd at times. Not sure exactly what I think there could be a lot that could be said about that and about human nature with that absurdity. I feel like it's purposeful at the same time too.
yeah, no, I agree. It's an interesting it's interesting how the judge almost makes everybody worse around him. Like it's almost like he's there to expose the evil within anyone he comes across, really. It's not really that he's doing it, though he certainly is, but he has it's almost like a demonic influence of some sort. Though he
Yes,
never outright
that's
says it.
I'm sure there are a lot of in-depth theories about that, but That was definitely my thing about it. I felt like that was the relationship with the kid and the judge. I my impression of what happened to the kid too at the end. It's him kind of
Yeah,
being overtaken by that influence.
I mean, what sold me about Blood Meridian was actually like the final passage before like the epilogue, if you want to call it that. He says he never sleeps. He says he'll never die. Like I'm just like, damn. You know, I don't know if I could put the words, just like it was like a punch to the chest or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, you mostly cover fantasy on your channel though.
It's the weirdest thing because yes, I started my channel in 2021,
Mm,
and before starting my channel, um, I'd been like a reader of fiction off and on. I'd gone through many reading slumps in my journey, and when I got back into reading, I really loved fantasy. I knew that was always I've always known that fantasy was my favorite genre,
mm-hmm.
even though I wouldn't even consider myself the most well-read fantasy reader. I definitely consider it my favorite genre. And what's weird is before I started my channel, I wasn't always reading a lot of fantasy. I was reading fantasy, but also other genres as well. And then I started my channel, and I didn't really plan it out this way. Just so happened that the whole first year of my channel was all fantasy.
I mean, we
And I
have what we
thought, okay,
like,
I'm just going with it. What was that?
I mean, we have genres we like. I mean, that's not a problem.
Oh, no, 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 it's not a problem, but it just kind of happened that way where like fantasy became the basis of my channel. I was fine with that. And then the weird thing is that last year, not exactly sure what happened, but it seemed like I kept on picking up books on a whim, like Blood Meridian, for example. I didn't necessarily plan that out on my TBR. The books that I picked up on a whim, a lot of them ended up being my favorites of the year. Yeah, and came in at number 3 on my top 10 books of the year. It could have gone higher,
Mm-hmm.
except that I had just finished it and I didn't know how much of it needed to be processed for a while. But I think it's definitely one of the best books I've ever read. Like a lot of my favorite books ended up not being fantasy books last year, and I started to feel like a fantasy loving fraud, which is not true. I still consider fantasy my favorite genre. I just think that there's something about reading other genres that actually makes me love fantasy even more when I come back to it, and I just think that it's part of the love of literature is just being able to read other genres too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know you've been reading one called a guy called John Williams, not the composer, but
Yes.
which has sounded interesting because I like westerns that aside from Blood Meridian. So that's definitely one author I'd like to check out at some point. I've noticed these kind of trends on BookTube, if that makes sense. Like some of the fantasy booktubers were like really getting into manga, but the one I've really enjoyed seeing is like the ones who are like getting it like. A lot of the fantasy booktubers are really interested in Cormac McCarthy for some reason. I think it's great, because I'm like, I want to see how these people react to it, because he's an acquired taste.
It just because I'm from the southwest part of the United States,
Mm-hmm.
so and I have family in northern Mexico. So a lot of the locations that he describes, I'm actually very familiar with. I've been there. I feel like I'm there. So it's a nostalgic thing for me too to read Cormac McCarthy. Now, John Williams. John Williams is an incredible writer. I hear about Stoner. I picked it up actually mostly because of Jimmy. I feel like I have to credit Jimmy a lot, which is kind of funny because he's the fantasy network, and then I end up picking up all this like non-fantasy because of him. But I do credit him because he did talk about Stoner on Chatting with Nuts and about the audiobook. And I did hear about the book prior to Jimmy, though, from somebody in the literary fiction part of BookTube.
Mm-hmm.
Do you follow some other channels that are not fantasy related? And so I do get some book ideas for them from them as well. But with Stoner, I knew that he was a big hit. That was a big hit book in the lit fic section of BookTube. And sure enough, I mean, I think it's a hard one to recommend because the premise sounds so boring. But
Mm-hmm.
it is the way that
Is that the academia
it's
one,
the way that John
Stoner?
Williams, yeah, yeah. but it's the way that John Williams executes the story. His other books are amazing too. Augustus is amazing, and then the other one you're thinking about, Butcher's Crossing. That's the Western he wrote. That one really tanked with reviews when it was first published. He felt very discouraged about it, and the author did. But I still think it's well worth reading. It's definitely not it's not going to be like McCarthy, but I still think
I don't
I
think
think it's a
anyone's going to
great
be like
book, and
McCarthy.
actually no, but I do think it's good. I think it actually has some really interesting. I think it's actually a really interesting critique of the Western genre. Like the more I read about the book and understood what he was trying to say through the book, the more I appreciated it. And even though it's nothing like McCarthy, there still are mild elements of absurdism that I think are put into good effect in that book. Yeah, I think it's well worth it.
I mean, I'm definitely. I mean, I like reading other genres. That's kind of what I'm trying to do with my channel because I don't want to be boxed in. I mean, I know every channel has their niche. That's fine, but I'm trying to I try to review in the genres I enjoy, like fantasy, science fiction, crime. Also try to cover comics because um, I watch a lot of. I like comic books, graphic novels, so.
Mhm.
Um, I actually read the Dune one, and the illustrations in that were pretty good. I enjoyed it, though I have very mixed opinions on Dune. And I remember we were talking a little bit before this, and you were just like, "What? You don't like Dune?" or something like that. Your mouth was open.
For me, Dune is a very special book. Is I read that book. Hmm, try to think like in 2011, around then. And the thing is, I had heard about the book my whole life. I mean, I had friends in high school who were all loved that book. I'd watched the 80s movie back then at a party, and it was so bad. And my friends at the time told me, they said, the book is so much better, I promise you. Sure enough, they were not wrong. I was so surprised when I read Dune because I personally loved it. I just loved the desert setting. I love desert settings, obviously, I guess.
Like deserts.
But I really loved, but I also love the family. I love that it's like about these very big ideas, right? I mean, we're bringing in ecology, and we're going into this interesting concept of spice and addiction and different themes like that. But at the same time, at the heart of the story, we have a family, especially the relationship between the mother and the son. I just really enjoyed that element of the story. And of course, the whole fear is the mind killer thing. The Bene Gesserit are so cool. So when I finished the book, I remember the first time I finished the book, it was very special for me because I felt like after finishing the book, not only did it feel like I read something so special, it felt like, and I remember finishing the book and thinking, this is possibly the best book I've ever read in my life. Like
Mm.
I had that amazing of an experience with it. But
Mm-hmm.
also, it made me feel like I understood a lot of people from my generation who were younger, like when we were younger, felt
Mm-hmm.
like made me feel like I understood a lot of the males I grew up with, oddly. And the other thing too with that book is that we're feeling very dissatisfied with the ending, like loving the book, thinking this could be the best book I've ever read, but the ending just I felt like I wanted more. And at the time I was discouraged from reading the sequels. I was told they weren't very good. And all these years later, I reread the book, loved it just as much the second time. Then I read Messiah and Children of Dune. Those two books, I think, just appreciate the first book even more. I just loved the whole of those three books, like the whole arc of Dune in those three books. I can understand why a lot of modern readers wouldn't love it. I mean, I think that the characters are definitely on the flat side, considering what modern readers love these days. It's an omniscient narration, and I know that that's also not on trend so much these days.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really enjoy Dune. I think it's just so. There's nothing. There's a feeling about that book that I can't describe. I feel like it's There's almost something that feels like coming home for me with that book.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't hate it, but I have mixed feelings. Because on the one hand, I enjoy what it's trying to do, which it sort of takes that Chosen One narrative and questions it. Like, you know, what if the Chosen One wasn't a good thing? I have read about what happens after, like, basically Paul commits genocide, pretty much, and basically becomes a monster.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is interesting, but it felt like it was too much telling, if that makes sense. I didn't really get the sense of who these people were, aside from, oh, here's Paul Atreides, and, you know, he's just hanging out in his bed, and, oh, he's doing this thing now, you know.
Yeah, that's what I mean by the flat character.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shoot. Lost a second.
Oh.
Is my camera going? I think I...
No, it glitched for a minute, and then you came back, so you're good.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, that's what I mean about the flat characterization. The characters tend to be a lot flatter in Dune, and I think that's partly due... I don't know, it could have to do, what I understood from the discussion I had on my channel about it, but I understand that was a little more on trend for especially sci-fi written during that time. Not to say that there weren't sci-fi writers write more realized characters during that era, but I think that that was not as common. I think it was more common to write the more flat characters and tell the bigger ideas through the characters. But for me, I didn't have a problem with it, because even though the characters are on the flat side, like the characters still represented their cultures, ideas, and the themes of the story. So the characters are more a vehicle for that than they are to show the deep psychology of an individual person. Does that make sense?
I mean, you know, I could read like Joe Abercrombie and get like a experience where it's like, oh, you get the character depth and the big themes. You know, that's, you know, I thought of that because I'm reading Best Served Cold right now, so say, did I like it? I'm enjoying it so far. It's interesting because I find the like side characters more interesting than the main one at the moment.
Okay, I think I might agree with you on that book. Yeah.
Though I like how it kind of carries over that theme that this world is so bad that it almost makes you worse.
Yes, I mean, I think that that's definitely a theme throughout the first Lost series.
Or, you know, characters trapped by circumstance. I mean, I was actually talking with some people last night. Because, you know, I finished Last Argument of Kings last month. And I was completely blown away by that ending. I was like, that was not... I mean, I'd heard from reputation that, like, Joe Abercrombie is not, you know... Mr. Giggles, you know, he's not gonna do what you expect him to do. I was not expecting that ending, that's for certain.
Yeah, he does do the unexpected endings, that's for sure.
I was like, well, this is, wow, alright, he's really going there, and it's like, and I thought about it, and I just thought, you know, what brings the three of the main characters of that original trilogy together, they're all trapped somehow.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, have you read, I guess you haven't read Red Country yet, have you?
No, I want to, because, you know, like I said, love westerns, so I really want to read that one.
Well, I'm really excited for you to read that one, because that one, and then I read Blood Meridian later in the same year.
Mm-hmm.
When you read Red Country, you will see the direct inspiration Abercrombie took from Blood Meridian.
Yeah, I've heard he said he really enjoys that book.
Well, I mean, it was just obvious. There's a whole scene, because I got to a scene in Blood Meridian, I was like, this is like Red Country. There's definitely more than one scene, probably, actually, in Red Country, where you could definitely see the influence there.
But yeah, I mean, like, neat. I don't mind, like, I mean, I like dark stuff. I don't know, I'm just weird that way. But I was not expecting what Abercrombie would do. In other words, like I thought at least like, oh, maybe it'll be like a bittersweet sort of affair. No, it's not. It's like a total like downer ending. Like I was like, oh man.
I know, yeah. Yeah. I think that that's the thing because everybody who starts reading Abercrombie, they're like, "Oh, this isn't that dark." It's so funny. And the endings. I think it's because for me, I think a lot
It
of
makes you care
grimdark
about
like
what
what
happens.
I think a lot of what defines grimdark for me is where we land. Where does the story take us? What is the, you know, where does it land at the end? Are we landing in a place of hope or are we landing in a place of nihilism? So,
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know.
it's I mean, I like Abercrombie because he has that emotion and humor in his work. So I'm like, I can
Yeah.
so it's not all sad.
No, it isn't. And actually, I don't even think it's totally hopeless either, now that I say that. I think there could still be elements of hope in there. But yeah, I think he definitely mocks human nature quite a bit. That's for
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, it's
No,
almost a small acts of kindness, like when
mhm.
like Logan's effect on Jazal's like change, like even while things might look bad, there is still little hope, and there is hope still that we can help others, right? Or that's what I kind of thought.
Mhm.
That was one of the things I picked up on after I thought about it for a little bit.
Yeah,
But I remember reading
cool.
Blade itself, and I was like, okay, all right, Lord Grimdark, let's see what you got. Start reading it, I was sucked in. I was like, man, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
I had a similar feeling when I read the Robert E. Howard Conan stories for the first time. Very good stuff. I enjoy it. But yeah, like I said, I like how all three of the main characters in the original trilogy are trapped somehow. Like Locke is trapped in this job that he hates, and in this body that doesn't work correctly anymore. Giselle doesn't realize he's trapped till the end because he's kind of an idiot. Logan is
Yes.
trying to get out of the trap, but he can't because as one of the things like in the third book, he's like, oh, I could just go. He's about to go back to the north. He's like, oh, I could do what I want to do and just go back, but for some reason he just keeps getting pulled back in. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're all kind of, in some ways, tragic character. At least he is for sure.
oh
Kind
yeah,
of a more tragic character in a way. Um,
Logan's one of my
yeah.
favorites. So
Fantastic character. Hmm.
I like how he's like a one part like goofy dad of the group, but then he's like this really dangerous bloody nine, of course.
Yeah.
Um, he's this very
Yeah. He's
dangerous opponent.
fascinating.
Um,
Very, very. Yeah. I mean, he really gets you because you start feeling for him with that dad part that you said. Like those fatherly conversations he gives, and you're like, "Oh, he's such a nice guy. I like him a lot." And then, boom, Bloody Nine comes out, and you're like, "Whoa."
you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's dangerous. I see why he's so. Everyone's frightened of him in the north. Uh, yeah, Glocta's my favorite because, of course, I guess I'm kind of basic in that way. Unfortunately, I don't know. He's such a mess of a person.
Bogda's amazing because I think, I've read other fantasy books where we have the character who is either elderly and disabled or just a little bit disabled and struggling with the stairs trope.
Mm-hmm.
But Bogda is just one of a kind. I think it's kind of like the best, probably the best of the best when it comes to that kind of character. Yeah, incredible, incredible work with him.
Yeah, he's not a complete monster. He's not a good guy by any stretch of the imagination. But like he wants to do I think it's like he wants to do good, he just doesn't really know how without it biting him in the ass. Or that's how I viewed it.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
by the end he's just like, you know what? Being good's overrated.
Man, this is. I'm one away from finishing all the First Law books well, except for Sharp Ends, the short story collection, I still haven't read that. But have left is what is it called? What is it called? A Wisdom of Crowds? It was the last book in the first lot, the last book in the Age of Madness trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, it's so good. I love it even more. I love it more than the first trilogy and the
Yeah, I've heard the
standalones
plot's
so
better in
far.
that book.
It is long. I would say, I mean, I think that the plot is good in the original trilogy, and I think it's good in each of the standalones. It gets really tight, at least so far in the Age of Madness. It just feels like everything, I don't know, he just has event after event flowing from one thing to the next in a very logical, seamless way. It feels like it's very tight.
No, I mean, but what I think what's interesting about Best Served Cold, I really like Shivers because
Yes.
mostly how he relates to Logan. I was saying the other day, I think they're like I remember I was talking with a friend of mine about another thing. It's almost like Shivers and Logan are the same person at different points in their lives, almost.
Mm.
You know, like Logan's the older and wiser. He's like seen more. And, he had already gone down the path that Shivers is going down in Best Served Cold right now, anyway. Or that's how I view it. I could be wrong.
They are I mean, it's interesting. I could see them almost being like brothers in a way.
Yeah?
uh, I don't know. It's interesting because they do have some similarities, but at the same time, I do feel like he does a good job of keeping them pretty distinct at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, I really appreciate Abercrombie's writing, his characterization, his battle scenes. That is such an incredible. It's so good. That particular book was actually probably my least favorite of the standalones, but I still think it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I have
And
some
I
problems
agree
with
with you
it.
about the side characters.
The repetition is a little more, like, there, and I'm just like... He did it in the first law, for sure. Like, he does repetition. But it's not, like, annoying. Where you're like, okay, I get it. In this, you're kind of like, okay, like, calm down, or, like, Shivers is always like, oh, I got some pride in me. I'm like, shut the fuck up, dude. Sorry. But,
Yeah, I think that I know that was my one complaint about Best Served Cold. I did feel like it got a little repetitive, especially in the second half of the book. I felt like the themes even got a little repetitive in that particular book. Um, I still loved the ending though, and I still think it's a good book overall.
oh, no,
So
it's still a good
I hope
book.
you
It's
enjoyed
just,
it.
I have, like,
Yeah.
more problems with it than I did, the other, like, the three.
I see. Yeah.
Even though,
Yeah.
like, before they were hanged, I did kind of... I don't want to say it was bad, because it wasn't, but I had some, like... it was good, and I enjoyed it, but there was, like, some issues I had with it a little bit. Not really a slump kind of thing, it was just kind of... Not enough was going on, I guess. I don't know.
Hmm. I love that book.
No, it's a good book.
I often say that that's the book that me as a reader because before I read Before They Were Hanged, I used to say that I was a reader who needed the balance between plot, character work. And in the first book, The Blade itself, I felt like, what are we doing? I felt like it was kind of meandering a
Mm.
while. Like I just wasn't as engaged in what was happening in the story, even though I loved his humor and I loved his character work and his prose. I really felt like I just lost engagement in the story after a certain point. So I wasn't totally sure if I was going to be into the series. Decided to continue after hearing so much praise and after hearing it gets better and better. So when I read Before They Were Hanged, it surprised me is I got to this point where I realized I don't even care where this story's going. Like I just loved the characters so much and the combination of characters so much. All that mattered to me.
Yeah, I know. It's like
So I was like
before, like
thinking, I
Blade
don't
itself
even
is like
care.
really good. I liked Blade. I liked Before They Were Hanged. I'm like, that's good. But Last Argument of Kings, I thought was just a step above both of them. You know. Yeah, it's a good book. I didn't hear what you said.
Oh no, I just said I love that one as well. And I love Last Argument of Kings because it recontextualizes happen all the way back from book one,
Mm-hmm.
you start to realize, oh, there's this whole overarching plot that I wasn't even aware of. So
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic
One of my favorite
conclusion.
bits is when Baez is like, "Oh yeah, Giselle did all these cool things," and Giselle's just like, "What? Oh, I didn't." Okay, I guess I'll just that poor fool. I was reading Best Served Cold. I'm like, good lord, even when he's trying to get like some side action, he can't get a break.
Yeah.
No, but great series. I mean, I enjoy like Game of Thrones and actually Lord of the Rings. I would like to reread that at some point, see if it still holds up for me, because I haven't read Lord of the Rings in a very long time. Uh,
I love the Lord of the Rings. This last time you read it, how long ago was it for you?
a few years ago at least. Game of Thrones too. I need to reread that because I remember I had some problems with it. Mainly, I think Martin likes to go too long, if that makes sense. Um, like, for instance, like in the first book, he had a great story with like Ned Stark, and then he just keeps going, and you're like, okay, there's like a couple hundred more pages of this, And again, I'd like to reread it, but at the same time, um, I don't know if they're ever gonna finish it, so or if Martin's ever gonna finish it, so I guess we'll see.
Oh, I think it's a masterpiece. I don't think it goes on too long, but that also could just be my reading taste. I love the way he develops things. And I love, have you read past the first book? Be
Oh,
curious.
I've read them all long time ago. Back when I was like in the Game of Thrones fever, I read them all, and I want to go back to them to see if they like hold up. I remember really enjoying them. I mean, Tyrion's my favorite. I don't know. I guess I just have a soft spot for crippled people and dwarves. But
Yeah, absolutely. I love Tyrion. I think that they're fantastic. Of course, I'm hosting a huge reread along of that series this year, and we're about to do our a Feast for Crows discussions over on my friend Scott's channel from a Bald Booktuber. No, it's amazing upon reread. I mean, I have to say, I didn't have any problems with the books the first time. They, they completely, they captured my imagination, and the other
might just be a
series that lived
personal
up to
taste
that
thing. That
could
happens.
be, yeah. Yeah, I think
Um,
it's a thing for sure.
um, I mean, I like world building. Like I read Perdido Street Station last year. That was my favorite book of last year because the world in that is just so vivid. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's I think it's a very underrated book, and I think more people should read it.
Heard of it, but I have not read it. But I keep hearing about it, so I might have to check it out at some point.
I know you're friends with Jimmy. I don't know if he told you about it, but I actually had Jimmy on here a few episodes ago. It's very fun.
I know he did a review of the book, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
So, yeah. So I have heard him talk about it. And it sounds like is it China? I can't say the
I
last
pronounce
name.
it Mieville. I mean, I don't know how it's supposed to be
Miego.
pronounced.
Yeah.
If I ever met him, he'd
Yeah.
probably be like, I don't fucking know. That's
Yeah. I've
another.
just heard fantastic things about his writing and his building for sure.
Have you ever had any of those authors where you're just like, man, I would really love to talk to that guy and really, you know, see like how his mind works or something like that? Because I'm like that when I read some books. I'm like, I really want to talk to that guy. Um,
Yeah, who's an author you would like to talk to?
well, I said that because like Mieville is one I would love to just talk with and like just see how his mind works and you know plus his approach to fantasy is so unusual in comparison to like other stuff. Joe Abercrombie definitely. Like I've seen like him do interviews with people, like I know he's very friendly with the booktube people, so I'm like someday I'll get
Yeah,
him.
I his interview with Murphy Napier is probably my favorite. It's interesting because I watched that video when it came out. Did you ever see that one? interview with him.
Is it the one about where she did the like Dear Authors and he was on it? Because I saw that one.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah, she talked to him specifically about prose.
Yes, I have seen that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with that particular interview, and I've talked about it to a few friends about it because the few people I know who've also watched it so many years, because that was a few years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
I still remember specific things he said to her in that particular discussion. Like, they've stuck with me that long. For example, the fact that the writing advice from his mother, write only what felt true and honest. So, like, if he was going to write a simile, for example, like, I can't remember exactly the example he used, but something about, like, the stars shine like diamonds or something, like, and she would say, do they really shine like diamonds? And he would, that kind of thing. And so he would only write what was authentic and true. I have to tell you, like, not because of that interview, but I have noticed and then thought back to the interview, his use of simile when he writes is, I think he's one of my favorite authors when it comes to his use of simile. Ah, my dang camera again. Sorry. I can't seem to keep my camera on.
One of my favorite things about Abercrombie is that he immerses you into the setting. Like, you're right there, Like, you're right there with Logan when he's going on his wacky adventures in the North, Character voice as well, he just nails it. I don't know how he does it. He makes it look so easy.
He also talked in that particular interview with Murphy about prose musical in some sense. And I feel like every time I'm reading Abercrombie, there is a flow, there's cadence, there's a rhythm to the way that he writes, to the way that he varies his sentences. Feels organized and yet not predictable either. So I don't know how he does it, but it's so distinct and it pulls you in as a reader. So I think he's just absolutely masterful with his language, with his use of tone. His settings are excellent. His character work, he's just a very gifted writer.
Yeah, I know. Like, if I asked, like, Abercrombie a question, I would be like, "What? Is there another genre you would like to work in? Because I really think you would write a great crime novel. I would really like to see that. I would like to see that a lot." That is one thing I would ask him. But yes, he seems very friendly with the BookTube community. Though, I mean, I only have...
I've been curious because
Oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, I've been curious because I saw that his wife is also an author.
Oh,
I think she writes in a different genre. I think maybe YA, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's an author too.
Oh,
I saw her on Twitter. I'm curious about that.
I was going to take a break from Abercrombie, but they announced that they're probably going to make Best Served Cold into a movie, so I'm like, damn it. Alright, I guess I'll read you. I'm enjoying it. I think it's a good book. Though again, I've had more problems than I had with the other books. I'm hoping that doesn't, because I do want to read, like, I want to read Red Country next. I know you kind of have to read the heroes, but I'm like, it's standalone, right? That's fine. Plus, I've heard that one of my favorite characters is in it, and I really want to see what he's up to. I've no spoilery though. Yeah, one of my I'm actually having Philip Chase on here next. I actually might contact him after we're done here. Like, we follow each other on Twitter now, so you follow me on Twitter, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm just...
Philip is wonderful. I'm actually reading his sequel right now for The Prophet of Edan, the Edan trilogy.
Yeah, I know. I was like, wait, is he putting all those out this year? And
yes.
I commented, I'm like, are you putting all these out this year? And I looked up, oh yeah, he is. I'm like, oh, sorry. And he's like, yeah, that's what comes for planning this out for 18 years. I wouldn't recommend it though, for like a tax write-off or something. or he said something to me in a comment. But he seems like a nice guy, and I'm really interested. I'm interested in people who take the fantasy genre seriously, like in a literary way, if that makes sense. So I managed to find him on Goodreads because I didn't want to send him an email because I'm like, would that be invasive? I don't know, but I made a decision. We talked.
Philip is probably the nicest person ever, so
Seems like a nice guy.
He's very, very kind.
I saw him talking about he has a daughter. Or I saw one of his Doctor Fantasies. He was talking about he has a grown daughter. I'm like, dude, how old is he? Because I thought maybe he's late 30s, maybe early 40s. I don't know. Oh.
He did his fifth. I know this because he did last year. He did a video of him playing tennis on his for his 50th birthday. He was showing off how good he is at tennis still in his 50s. So,
yeah. Tennis.
Yeah.
No. Are there books that you're looking forward to reading in the future this year, or maybe even next year? Have you even thought that far?
I did not intend this year to be such a big reread year for me, but I'm going to be finishing some rereads, so I need to finish rereading A Song of Ice and Fire.
Uh-huh.
So I have the last book to read for that.
Mm-hmm.
I also, obviously, I'm reading Philip's trilogy this year, so I'm past the halfway point in his second book. Give me a while longer to read than I expected. I do hope to finish that trilogy this year, too. I do want to read the third book when it comes out, and I'm guessing he'll give me an arc for that, since he gave me an arc for the last two. I look forward to reading those. And then I think we are going to be reading, I actually have some buddy reads planned with Philip. I think he and I are going to be reading Aspect Emperor by Baker, a continuation series from the Prince of Nothing trilogy.
I've seen he's blown up. R. Scott Baker or Bacher? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Baker, and he's also
Baker.
very influenced. And he's also very influenced by Blood Meridian, by the way.
Oh,
opens up his third book in the Prince of Nothing trilogy by Blood Meridian.
I've been try his work because I have a friend of mine. Baker commented on one of his posts about one of the articles. He talks a lot about world building apparently. And apparently they had, I wouldn't call it a spat, but it was a heated discussion, if you will. And that kind of was So I've been hesitant to try out his books, but maybe someday. I'm not completely turned off.
So what happened? Baker commented on your friend's post?
Yeah, my friend has a blog, and he was talking about, because there's a guy called M. John Harrison, also a fantasy science fiction writer. He wrote Vericonium, and he has very unconventional opinions about world building. Well, apparently Baker took issue with it, and then my friend took issue with that, and then Baker commented on his post. It was kind of a mess, and I'm just like, oh Lord, I tend to stay out of that stuff, but I just thought it was kind of funny, and now every time I see people talk about him, I just think of that. So,
how long ago was that? Because from what I understand, Baker hasn't been active at all.
Oh, a few years ago. Maybe
yeah,
several years ago.
I wonder about that too. I mean, things can get so out of context online sometimes too, when it's just texting kind of thing, or comments back and forth. I've seen it happen before so many times.
I will say I am curious to check out Philip's book because I don't know, the concept sounds interesting. I suppose, is that a good way to put it? Yes. I'm intrigued by the style because it seems very classical, and I'm like, that could be interesting. Clearly I'll ask him about it. It does feel kind of awkward that I haven't read his book yet. And we're gonna I'm gonna oh, what made you write this book? And I haven't read it, yay. But
Old Norse and Celtic and Welsh, and like he draws inspiration from Beowulf, huge
Mm-hmm.
Beowulf scholar, as you know, and at the same and Tolkien, obviously,
Oh
and
yeah.
also Buddhism. So like I did do a
Yeah,
spoiler-free
that's what
review of Philip's
interested
book.
me because I'm like, I don't really see like, because I have an like on and off interest in Buddhism, so
Hmm.
um, yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's.
same here. I think I told you I'm not a Buddhist myself,
I
but
thought
I
I
have
like I asked you
some.
because I thought like I heard you going like, oh yeah, Buddhist or you were talking about like Buddhist circle or something, and I was like, wait, are you Buddhist? And you're like, no,
No, I'm
no.
not Buddhist. I have spent some time in Buddhist circles, and I've read some books in Buddhism. So I am familiar with Buddhism and Buddhist elements, and so I spoke about that in my review, and I'm kind of proud of that, honestly, because I've seen a lot of Way Up Dad reviews, and I've only seen one other person mention that, and after I told him, you better talk about the Buddhist things. So I feel like I had to prompt him to talk about it. But yeah, I don't think that gets highlighted a lot. And I feel like it is a really interesting aspect of that trilogy. For me, that's what makes it fresh and different than
Mm-hmm.
just your traditional classic story. Because it does have a lot of classical tropes and things like that. But particularly loved the transcendental parts of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, does portray elves in a very interesting way,
I do
to
like
say the
elves,
least.
so yeah.
Well, it's kind of a joke we have because it's not necessarily Philip's fault, but what happened was um, I had my friend Gregory LaPerche. He hasn't been active on BookTube in a long time. I started my channel. He used to have these conspiracy theories about
Nah.
booktubers, and one of his conspiracy theories about me was an elf.
Ah.
I never showed my ears in videos. I always had my ears covered by my hair. We said I suspect Johanna is an elf. That's my conspiracy theory. A video one time, and I actually have elf ears, so I put them on, and I said, "Where do you get that idea?" And I showed my elf ears. So Philip saw that video, and he got such a kick out of it. And then I made an appearance in another video. I was pretending to be Arwen for a skit from Lord of the Rings, did an Arwen skit for a friend. And then Philip really took off with this idea. So I met Philip in person last year at the ICFA conference. I met him and Jimmy and Alan and Stephen Erickson and AP Canavan.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of fun. But after that particular meeting, Philip did a video, and you can find it on his channel. It's called "I'm So Sorry, Jimmy." Made up this whole story about how this assassin elf that I beat up Jimmy with an alligator. And
Might have to see
so
this.
called he's called me an assassin elf ever since then. And actually, at one point, I asked him. I said, "So Philip," because I was doing a tag, and I said, "If I were a fantasy character, who would I be?" And he said, "Oh well, I think you would be an elf." So he's very like endearingly called me an elf for a long time. Then I found out that there are elves in his trilogy, and then I read about the elves in his trilogy, and it turns out the elves in his trilogy are pretty evil. They're not
Oh
nice.
man.
They're pretty mean. They're pretty bad. They're pretty bad. I'll just say that. So I was
um.
like, Philip, we were friends.
um. Well, I'll talk to you about one more thing before I let you go here. In another round of people try to convince me to read Malazan because I have a friend, a very close friend of mine, who is a bit obsessed with Malazan. Is like, Britton Summers, you
Yeah.
should go read that series as soon as humanly possible. And um, I have a general rule about fantasy that I just stick with like trilogies or standalones, and if there is a longer series that I enjoy, like it's if something really captures my attention. And Malazan is like 10 books long, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of intimidating, I suppose. So you've read Malazan, haven't you?
I've read the 10 book series. I haven't read all of the Malazan books or Malazan books because there's all the Esselmont books and several sub-series, but I have read the 10 very big books, the 10 Yes, and it's probably my favorite series of all time. I love it.
Well, I guess I should say I should ask, why should I read it? Like, why is it worth my, like, why would it be worth my time for somebody who's picky about longer series? Like, I haven't even
Oh well,
touched Wheel of Time with a 10-foot pole.
I don't know if I would touch Wheel of Time, to be honest with you. I don't know. I should never say never, but it doesn't really call to me personally. Now with with that particular series, with the Malazan series, I would say this is not an easy question because I actually did a spoiler-free discussion on my channel, and it's with Jimmy and with Alan from the Library of Alexandria, and Philip Chase and Brittany from Books with Brittany.
Mm-hmm.
It was an interesting discussion because at the
I have to
very end
watch
of that
that.
discussion,
I might have to watch that.
I recommend it because at the very end of the discussion, we're all fans of the series. We all loved it for different reasons.
Mm.
It's really interesting. So, for example, um, I think Alan, he loves it for the sieges, for battle scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Brittany does not like military stuff, so she liked it more for the world building and the characters, I think, the character explorations. Jimmy, I don't know, he liked, I guess I need to ask Jimmy again what he loved about it, but I think he loved pretty much all of it. And then Philip, he just says, Philip claimed it was just great literature, but everybody has a different answer to that question. I think, like, it's really tricky. So what I would say is, like, for a personal journey, and what I would say is that a lot of people will say read the first three books before deciding if it's for you, that you really have to read the first three books because books one and two are so different from one another. Very, very different. And they're set in different continents with different sets of characters. I would say rather than read three books, because that's a huge commitment on its own,
Mm-hmm.
I would say read Gardens of the Moon. And if you're so on it, if you're okay with it, um,
Already
maybe
throws a
try
lot
book
at you in that
two.
book.
Yeah. I P does. I would say that I'd say to give the first two books a chance. And if you don't like those two books, if you like one of the books, one of two, I would say go ahead and try book three. But if you don't like Gardens of the Moon and you don't like Dead House Gates, if you don't like either one of the books, there are other series for you. Yeah,
Fair enough.
what I would say. But I also say that you have to, it's such a personal journey. You need to go at it at your own pace. And oh man, I could go on forever. I could go on for an hour. But I really, like, for me, I'll say this. This is my own journey and like my own personal taste with it. And it's so hard to recommend. Loved Gardens of the Moon.
Hmm.
Absolutely loved it. Was it an easy read? No. Understand everything perfectly? No. Did I care? No, because I just found, for me personally, where I was in my reading journey at the time, thought it was so different. It was like Blood Meridian might be for you, or
Mm-hmm.
you get something so different, so unique, such an interesting, distinct tone and atmosphere that I think that that's the kind of appeal it was for me. It was the novelty the book offered me as a fantasy reader, mystery, the interesting wild ideas, and the quirkiness with the characters. Did enjoy the character work in book one, honestly. And especially the female representation in book one was also a strong point for me as a female fantasy reader. So I personally loved Gardens of the Moon, probably more than most Malazan fans. I did not love the second book as much on my first read. I did love the ending. It wasn't as easy to read for. It wasn't as gripping for me as book one was. But what I found is that I took a break after book two, and I found myself that thinking about book two, even though, like I said, I didn't the experience reading book two as much as book one. I kept thinking about it, and that's when I knew I had to read on. And once I read on, I was hooked, and there was no stopping. But I think it takes some reflection. I think it's important to go into the series knowing that it is a critique of the fantasy genre in some ways, while at the same time it is the fantasy genre. So I know a lot of people have said before it's kind of like a deconstructivist, um, what is it, postmodern critique of the fantasy genre. I have
Mm-hmm.
a friend who did a whole video about that. You understand that going in, understand he's not trying to do things in the typical way that we fantasy readers are used to, and just having an open mind about that, I think that you could have a really good experience. I think reading Blood Meridian could be a good way of warming you up to that because in Blood Meridian, you're there for the journey. You're there for absorbing something new and different and being willing to take your time and explore themes that's probably going to lead to having a really good journey. But there's a lot of fun things in Malazan. There's like great humor, there's great banter, there are great epic battle scenes, there's great crazy magic. So there's a lot to love, but it's just going to be so different reader to reader.
Mm. All right then. Well,
Sorry, I could just go on forever, but
no, it's all right.
hopefully, I hope you enjoy it though. And I know it's intimidating to think of it as a 10-book series. I just say, there's no rush. If you read one or two Malazan books a year, why not? You have time, you know? The series is done. Like, the rush. There's no rush. So just enjoy it at your own pace.
Yeah. All right. I'll keep that in mind. I have a bunch of other fantasy stuff I wanna read too. So there's also that. Because I'm a mood
Yeah.
reader, so that comes into play. I don't know about you. Haven't you said you're a mood reader as well? I don't remember.
It's funny. I did a discussion on my channel about mood reading, and at the time I was convinced I was a mood reader. What I've learned since then is that I'm somewhere in the middle. I mean, to some extent, I think my mood does dictate my reading, but I'm as big a mood reader as I thought I was initially because I do seem to be able to stick to a TBR pretty well. I think when it comes to mood, it's more like, am I in the mood for reading or am I not in the mood for reading? Necessarily so much I'm in the mood for this type of book comes into play sometimes, but I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a mystery to me in some ways. I don't, but I do know some people, big time mood readers, that their mood will sway them one way or another when it comes to books. I'm quite in a mood reader. I think I'm somewhere in the middle of that spectrum.
All right. Well, I want to keep you forever, of course. But thank you. This has been a lovely conversation.
Thank
Um,
you. It's been a pleasure.
if you want to share like your social media or anything, feel free. That's yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I would just say again, my channel is Joanna or at Joanna underscore reads, and happy to have anybody's welcome to come and chat with me in the comments section. I'm also active on the Grimoire Discord, which I have linked in all of my videos now because I'm a co-owner of that Discord. My camera keeps on. Shoot, my back.
No, I heard.
I was
I
saying,
gotcha.
my yeah, sorry. So yeah, I was just gonna say that I'm also a co-owner of the Grimoire Discord.
Mm.
That's along with some other friends, including Alex from Tall Guy Reads, not Scott the Ball Booktuber. I'm thinking of something else. Alex from Tall Guy Reads, Theo from Rekindled Reader, Gibson, and Baron from Your Brain on Books, Matt from Matt on Books. So all of us are co-owners of the Grimoire Discord, and we're more than happy to have more people join us to join in the conversation there. But anyway, yeah, this was such a fun conversation. It was nice getting to know you.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. If you want to go check me out on Twitter, I'm on Twitter. I don't post as much on there, but I'm also on Goodreads and Letterboxd. I write reviews on there, which, as I like to say, are probably more articulate than the reviews I post on YouTube. But I also have a Discord, but I think I fear I might have started it too early. But who knows? Anyways, thank you for joining me. I appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure.
All right, take care, everyone, and see you guys next time.
Okay. Bye.